Another big game before we get back to the SEC. Big Ten, number 8 Michigan State at number 16 Maryland. KenPom sitting at Maryland -3. FanDuel opened Maryland -3.5, -120-ish, but now is settled back at -3.5. So -110 both ways. Big about standard. And the Spartans sitting atop the Big Ten standings with that tiebreaker edge over Michigan because they went to Michigan and won on Friday night. We touched on that game on the last Beat the Closing Number. Maryland's still on the hunt for the Big Ten regular season title, but more so, much more in the conversation for the double bye in the Big Ten tournament. Crab 5 against Sparty and Tom Izzo. Don't get John Rothstein started on Tom Izzo in March. But anything for you or no edge, just like Auburn Ole Miss?
Give me the crab. Give me the crab 5. I'm not 100% sure I'm betting on it. But I love this team. I think this is a great spot to take them. Top of the table. I don't know if that's where you want to be, Eli. I just don't. And guess what? Michigan State has a ugly luck rating next to their name. 22-5, expected to be 18-9 per shot quality. Now, I mean, look, if you're Coach Tom Izzo listening in on this, and you're like, what? I mean, no. You want that. You would like, if I'm a coach, I'm thrilled to be 22-5 when shot quality says I should be 18-9 because I am overperforming. That means my players are hitting shots. Things are going well. There is a duality to expected metrics. It is akin to Newton's third law, right? Every time you do well, advanced metrics will likely tell you the correct direction to expect to trend is back towards the regular, right? And that there's nothing wrong with that. So that's just the inherent nature of success. So they're at the top of the Big Ten. And so very naturally, that is probably an overperformance. Against the spread in their Division I games or whatever games are here on for SQ's counting for whatever lines we have, always subject to fraction or something. 18-9, but expected to be 13-4. So again, covering a lot of spreads, getting to the free throw line at a 38.2% rate in conference. But guess what? Maryland only gets opponents there on defense at 26.5. So rock in a hard place there, a bit between how Michigan State is going to force that issue. Maryland, I think, should have the answer. I like laying spreads in a -3 scenario in the Big Ten. And I think if you like Michigan State, you take the money line. I don't, these close games, I don't know, maybe it's my model. Maybe my model's a little off. But I very, very rarely have value on that +3 compared to that money line. I think there's more on the money line.
Yeah, and you take into account home court advantage for Maryland, sold out Xfinity Center. Also, Maryland's transition defense matches up really well against Michigan State that relies on those first and secondary breaks in transition. Look at
and again, this is two teams that got 5 guys on both sides, kind of, It's like
that's where I wonder really quickly.
Yeah.
How long does this last for Maryland? 3 straight games with each starter scoring in double figures. What happens when Jacoby Gillespie gets in foul trouble? Bad things? But when is it going to happen? We have yet to see it. The market.
Smart. They're playing smart.
I just worry about that, man.
I do too. And I think, that's why the team has jumped from being a 101 odds champion now down to 40? Same level as this Michigan State team. And I think there's always there's a lot of anti-priors bias right now in the analytics community. Everyone's very up in arms about BPI and how heavily they're weighing preseason priors, but I don't know. I've only this is my 5th official tournament that I'll be fully breaking down analytically. Every single March, I feel like these priors rear their ugly head, and all of a sudden, the teams that we thought were going to be better in March, in November, that maybe had a bad season, kind of pull it together a little bit and come to play in the biggest games of the season. And there's something to be said for Power Fives that kind of waltz into the tournament and don't really have to play their best ball until we get to the third month of the year. Like Baylor's going to be like, unless they really blow it in the next 2 to 3 games, an early exit from the Big 12 tournament, VJ Edgecombe or Omier and Roach could just have 4 good games and make it to San Antonio. Like, that's just the truth. They just have those guys on the roster. VJ Edgecombe is going to be like a lottery pick. If you haven't watched him play, he's absolutely destructive. Like, there's guys like this, there's teams like this. And so, yeah, Maryland isn't one of those teams, right? Like, they weren't a preseason favorite. They weren't expected to be in this. They could essentially crumble at the seams, and it could all fall apart in a heartbeat against someone like a Baylor if they get a bad draw, because they don't have the talent depth. They don't really have the next man up. They need all the Crab Five to absolutely go crazy and play well, and if they get targeted properly, it could fall apart. I'm really interested to see if this goes well, because this kind of has to, if you believe in them to do well, because this is a home game, right? You're not going to get that advantage against a serious tournament team. If they're going to make a run, you got to be able to at least keep this game within 1 possession. If they lose this game by multiple possessions, Eli, I think, unless like the shot quality says they had the worst shooting night of their life, I'm worried. So big test. I think they pass. I do think they pass, and the environment helps them a lot. But if they fail, it's a bad omen. So big test.
Yeah, I keep seeing, and I want to get my handicap for this matchup in a second,
Yeah,
but I
don't even have one.
No, you're fine. Just back to your synopsis with Maryland long term. We both have those long shot futures. I think you have around a 90-1 title.
Yeah.
I have around 24-1, something like that, Final Four odds. But I'm not that bullish, just because, like you said, when push comes to shove, when water meets its level, and Jacoby Gillespie, Rodney Rice, Selton Miguel, somebody, I think they could deal with Reese or Queen in foul trouble just because you have the other. But if one of your primary guards gets into foul trouble in March and you face a Baylor, all bets are off. And I'm probably throwing my Final Four bet into the trash. So, long story short, I'm not nearly as high anymore on Maryland, or at least relative to the current pricing, that maybe some people are touting Maryland 50-1 to win the title like I've seen on X. I would not be running to the window to bet Maryland to win it all at this price. But
it's so funny. It's like 2% difference in price, but it matters. It matters. Yeah, I wouldn't either.
Absolutely. But going back to your handicap and why you at least lean toward Maryland here, Michigan State's interior defense has been ripped apart of late. Second percentile in at-the-rim field goal efficiency allowed. 23rd percentile in paint field goal efficiency allowed. Cooper, Kohler, Zappala, more so Kohler and Zappala, have been really, really unreliable in the post. We saw it against Vlad Golden over the weekend. We saw it against Indiana a couple weeks ago, Umar Ballo and Malik Renew. And now you face Derek Queen, who can take you off the dribble in the mid-range, and Julian Reese, take you off the dribble from the top of the key for that matter. Two of the best bigs in the conference. So it would be Maryland.
It's what you have to do. It's what you have to do.
Yep. I don't see any edge for me, but it would be Maryland or pass if I had to make a bet.
Yeah, it's really, that transition battle is going to be big. Mental game, honestly. If Michigan State starts hot, they're not losing this one. Give me both sides of the two-way, I forget what it's called, the full half, right? I think halftime winner probably wins the game, right? Whoever's leading, take it back. If the halftime winner has a multi-possession lead, it's probably going to be tough to come back. I think, this is going to be one of those games where the team that I just don't think it's going to be 50 lead changes. It's going to be a good one, but both these teams can score. So it's whoever figures out how to score without that little extra efficiency per possession is going to edge the other one out by the time they get to that end of the game, unless, of course, there's extreme variance. And I doubt it, because there will be enough possessions to iron that out.
We keep asking who is Michigan State's, or maybe not you and I, but the Royal we keep asking that, who is Michigan State's number one scorer? Jace Richardson has emerged. 21 points against Michigan over the weekend. Only 12 against Purdue, but he's had some big scoring outputs, or double-digit scoring outputs, I should say, to the point where he's been reliable, like against Oregon, 29 points at home when they were trailing at the break. I'm really curious to see what happens to this Sparty team in March. Post-up defense aside, and maybe bank shots aside, like we saw with Jeremy Fears hitting that banked-in three to put the game on ice against Michigan on Friday. They have a primary score. This is your typical Tom Izzo team. I'm not as bullish on the Big Ten, despite the fact that they're the second-rated conference per KenPom behind the SEC. But Michigan State is starting to round into that team that I'm probably not betting against in March.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, and interestingly enough, their future price has been about as stubborn as it gets. You've been able to get 40-1 on this team since the turn of the new year. It hasn't moved.
Right. Yeah. So if you like Michigan State, which neither of us are advocating for, but the market isn't high on this team, or at least high relative to them sitting atop the Big Ten standings. We'll see what happens tomorrow night. You look at the rest of their schedule, for that matter: Maryland, Wisconsin, Iowa on the road, and then Michigan at home in a rematch. So maybe the market has a point. That's a tough gauntlet to end the regular season, despite the fact that they're up in the standings.
I just don't think the market's going to change its mind on the odds that this team has to win the title based on anything that happens in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
There's just a couple teams now. We've seen 25 games. They're going to make the tournament. They're approximately going to have a seed line 1, 3, 5. I don't know. And we know what that usually leads to. So, yeah, I'm kind of putting closing up the portfolio a little bit. Like, I don't plan to make many more futures on the winner, on the Final Four. If you are doing that, you're probably doing it on mid-majors on the hunch of trying to, like, finesse bids. You know, who's going to win a conference tournament, and then maybe who could be advantaged to do well if they do so. But other than that, I'm not interested in many more March futures. I have my bags packed. I think there's like 30 bets down. It's a lot.
UC San Diego moved from 95 to 65-1 in about 24 hours. That was the only one that stood out to me. Top 30 or top 35 in KenPom as a mid-major in the Big West is very, very impressive. And they're borderline, not elite, but upper echelon for sure in college basketball.
We got to see how they do, though, when they see a real team.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem is that, like, their non-con was okay. Like, I mean, here's the thing. I think they're going to get a at-large. I'll go as far to say that. I think they could lose the tournament at this point. 22-4, their first year of eligibility. They've lost once to UC Riverside at home, once to UC Irvine. Riverside away, Irvine at home. Both shot quality wins, by the way. A couple shot quality losses along the way. But, I mean, yeah, this team is hyper impressive. I just think they lost to San Diego State to open the year, and that was, I think, that's the biggest blemish they have. And then the only other real ones are that they should have scheduled tougher. Toledo, LaSalle, Seattle, Pepperdine, James Madison. I mean, James Madison's great. They're a tournament team. But if they really thought they could be a top 25 team, they should have maybe saw a couple more Power 5 schools. But maybe no one wanted to play them. I don't know. That's part of the problem. So they look great. I'm excited. I hope they do it.